I came home with tulips and a box of eclairs because the bakery by my office had a line out the door, and I waited anyway. I set them on the counter and said I'd grabbed her favorite. She didn't look up from the sink. "Don't start," Jenna muttered, rinsing a glass that looked already clean. "I'm tired." "From what?" I asked. "The day off." It wasn't a day off. Short, flat. She dried the same glass twice and left it on the rack like a prop. I reached for a plate, moved the box toward her. "They're fresh," I tried. "Coffee's still hot in the thermos." "I'm not hungry." She stepped back like the eclairs might bite. "And stop hovering." If I'd known where that tone was headed, I would have saved my small talk and skipped straight to the part where I stop asking. She grabbed her phone off the counter. Thumb went to muscle memory. Swipe, lock, screen down. We'd been married long enough for that little move to hit like a slap. I didn't say anything. I poured myself coffee I didn't want and let her leave the kitchen first on purpose. "You free Friday?" I asked, following her into the dining room. "I booked a table at Riverwalk." "We haven't." "Can't." She pulled a toad onto her shoulder, already moving toward the door. "Girl's thing." "Another one." "It's not another one. It's the one we planned." No eye contact. "Don't wait up." "Noted." I slid the flowers into a jar because the vase was missing, like a lot lately, weirdly, and put the eclairs in the fridge. "I'll bring you one tomorrow." "Whatever," she said, and that was that. The last months had been a series of whatever. Cold shoulders, the dead face at dinner, the phone that lived face down. I used to chalk it up to stress. Then I ran out of excuses and started keeping score. She was on her girl's thing, so often the girls must have needed name tags. Calls at odd hours. Whispering in the kitchen with the door half closed. "It's work," she'd throw over her shoulder, even on her day off. And the night she got home late, smelling like a bar, she brushed past me saying, "Don't be ridiculous." And I stood there looking at her shoes and made another mark on the mental ledger. I tried to fix it the way you fix a crooked shelf. Dinners. A weekend in the mountains. I booked a couple's massage she canceled 20 minutes before with migraine. Everything bounced. One night, I opened our shared map app because I was looking for a hardware store, and her little icon wasn't where it should be. It was across town, down by the old industrial park where the city trails off into houses with big yards and boats on trailers. My thumb hovered. I told myself to breathe. Then I grabbed my keys. The backyard belonged to a beige ranch with a new fence. Motion lights washed the grass in hard white. I parked 2 houses down and walked the sidewalk like I belonged there. When I reached the hedge, I saw them. Jenna in a soft sweater I'd never seen, and a man in a work jacket. They stood close. His hand cupped the back of her neck like he'd practiced. Her face was turned up. It didn't need translation. My hands didn't shake often. They did then. I took one picture. That was enough. On the drive home, I replayed it until I hated my own brain. She came in near midnight with a bright hey, like she'd found $1 on the sidewalk. I asked how the night went. "Great," she said, kissing the air next to my cheek. "We had fun." "Right," I said. "Fun." I didn't sleep. In the morning, I called a private investigator whose card my buddy Ethan had once tucked into my wallet as a joke after his divorce. We met at a diner off the highway. The guy introduced himself as Rick, mid-50s, eyes that had seen every version of this story. "You already know," he said after I slid my phone across the table. "But you need it stitched up." "Exactly." "No speeches to her," he said. "You do that, they go to ground. Let me gather it clean. Photos. Times. Who he is. Then you choose your next move. And when you do it once." "Fine by me," I answered. "I don't like repeating myself." He nodded, like we'd shaken hands without touching. The next week was a performance. Jenna laughed at nothing. She texted in the bathroom. She was back late, 3 nights out of 7, and with the girls 4 out of 4. I moved out of the bedroom without ceremony. I took the guest room, set my alarm for 5, and stopped explaining my mornings to anyone. "Why are you sleeping in there?" she asked from the doorway on day 3, voice neutral like a customer service script. "Because I like sleep," I replied, folding a shirt into the dresser. "And I like not being woken up by a door at 1 a.m. So dramatic." "I can do dramatic," I said, meeting her eyes. "But I prefer simple." She scoffed and walked away. That night she came home before 10 and put a plate in front of me. Salmon, salad, the whole effort. She sat with her phone on the table, screen up, like a prop. I overreacted, she started, stabbing at lettuce. I've been overwhelmed. I shouldn't have been so distant. Okay. I poured water. What changes? What? If it's overwhelmed, what changes? She blinked. You're making it weird. I'm making it clear. I leaned back. Separate schedules. Separate money for a while. You handle yours. I'll handle mine. If you need me, call. Not at 1 in the morning from a driveway. She pushed back from the table. So you're punishing me. Setting boundaries isn't punishment, I said. It's clarity. She softened her face like a stage light had changed. I can try more, she offered. Maybe dinner like this twice a week. You can do what you want, I said. I'll adjust to your actions. She didn't like that phrase. It didn't come with a slot to jam guilt into. 2 days later, Rick called. Got him, he said. Name's Aaron. Married. Sales. Lives over by the river. I have dates. Spots. Video. He's not careful. I stared out at the shop floor through my office window while forklifts beeped. His wife. Lisa, Rick said. You want that contact? My advice is wait. But I know you. You'll call. He wasn't wrong. I wasn't built to sit quietly in a burning room. I reached out. We met at a roadside cafe with formica tables and a view of the gas station. She walked in cautious but steady, early 30s, hair up, a ring still on. I stood. Lisa, I said. Yeah, she answered, studying my face. You must be Mark. Why am I here? I placed the photos on the table. The ones I took. The confirmation. She didn't cry. She didn't curse. She looked for a while like someone memorizing a map. I suspected, she said quietly. I hoped I was wrong. We're in the same room, I answered. She nodded once and exhaled. What now? Now we compare notes, I said. And we stopped being the only two in the dark. We traded times like baseball cards. Her work trips. His late clients. Rick's timestamps. The pattern was insultingly neat. She closed her notebook and glanced at me. They won't stop, she said flatly. No, I agreed. They found a script they like. So what do you want to do? Be done, I said, cleanly, without shouting. She tapped the edge of the table. I can do that. She looked up. I want one day without lies first. You'll have it, I told her. And so will I. On my way back to the office, I called Ethan. He's the guy in our shop who reads the manuals no one else opens. He knows every process and most of our employees' birthdays. He also has a mouth like a nail gun. Checking in on you, he said. You look like you've been living on black coffee in spite. I have a plan, I told him. I'm not sharing yet. Good, he said. Because if you go off half-cocked, she'll run circles and tell you you're the problem. You're not. Move like you mean it. I intend to. That night, Jenna came home early again with takeout and a bottle of something she never bought. She put on music. She asked about my day like she remembered my job. I was thinking, she started, leaning on the counter. We could do a weekend at the lake next month. Reset a little. I'm booked, I replied, checking my calendar though I'd already cleared it. I'm taking some time. With who? She challenged. Solo, I said. Projects I've ignored. People I haven't seen. So you're punishing me, she repeated. If you say it enough, it won't become true, I answered deadpan. We operate on informed consent now. You do your evenings. I do mine. We compare notes if there's respect. If there isn't, we don't. That is the coldest thing you've ever said. No, I said. It's the clearest. She prepped a third girls' night that week. Blow dryer. New perfume. Bag packed like she was moving in somewhere. She paused in the doorway to the guest room. Don't wait up, she tossed, testing my reaction like a lab experiment. I won't, I said, and returned to my spreadsheet. I was already doing the math on the house, the accounts, the car. Not to punish, to separate. Friday afternoon, she texted from the driveway. Out of town with the girls till Sunday. Don't call. I sent back a thumbs up. The message got delivered. I watched the tiny read, note appear and disappear. Within an hour, Lisa sent me a screenshot. Aaron had written, client dinner, then early drive tomorrow. Don't wait up. We both knew the script. We met 30 minutes later in a hardware store parking lot. No trench coats, just two people who were done being stupid. You ready? She asked, leaning on her sedan. More than ready, I said. But we're not going to lurk in hedges. We're going to do something else. Good, she answered. Because I didn't bring binoculars. We drove to my place. I let us in. The house smelled like the candle Jenna always burned to make the kitchen look like a catalog. On the table, I laid out 2 manila envelopes. Inside were printed timelines, photos, and simple paperwork. No speeches. No dramatics. I added a note. Sign when you get back. No arguments. We both know the facts. I left a pen. You're not going to wait? Lisa asked. No, I said. I'm going to the coast. You're coming, if you want the quiet day you asked for. Now. Now. She smiled for the first time since the diner. Let's go. We drove south. The road unwound past farm stands and used car lots. We didn't talk much at first. It wasn't awkward. It was the sound of no lies. I feel like I should feel worse, she said an hour in, watching the tree line slide by. Is that wrong? It means you've been in the bad long enough that the absence of it feels like relief, I replied. No need to dress it up. We stopped at a cafe where the owner wiped the same spot on the counter and poured coffee like he was paid per refill. We sat outside and watched gulls steal fries. It wasn't a date. It was triage. Do you ever think about when it started? She asked. Too much, I said. And it doesn't matter. Right? On the beach we walked in jeans, shoes off, cuffs rolled. She pointed at a house with peeling paint and said her grandfather used to fish off a pier that looked just like this. I nodded and told her about the time my dad let me steer his truck down a dirt road and we almost parked it in a ditch. Human stuff. True, because it was small. That evening we rented a weathered cottage with a deck that faced the water and a grill that had seen better summers. We bought groceries. I sent a single photo from the deck. Me, son behind me, coffee in hand, Lisa in the background laughing at something dumb on TV. The caption, celebrating clarity. Paperwork's on the table. Sign it. The read receipt popped up. Then nothing. 5 minutes later my screen lit. Where are you? Jenna wrote. I'm home. Where are you? At the beach, I sent. You'll manage. You're with her, she typed. This is disgusting. You're late to that conclusion, I replied, and blocked her number. It felt like closing a door that had been swinging in the wind. For the next 48 hours, we did nothing particularly exciting. We cooked. We watched the water change color. We slept without alarms. We didn't touch. It wasn't that story. It was 2 people taking a breath. Back home, Jenna tried other channels. Email. Messages from numbers that shouldn't have had mine. I didn't engage. I wasn't running. I was done. Ethan texted a row of skull emojis, and then heard anything. I sent him a photo of the envelopes on my dining table, both with signatures when I went back Sunday night. He replied, clean. Monday morning at the shop, I brought in donuts for the crew and a new schedule for myself. I pulled Ethan aside. I'm taking the next 2 Saturdays, I told him. How's stuff? Finally building that deck, he grinned. Finally clearing dead weight, I answered. He didn't need the footnotes. At lunch, Jenna showed up at my workplace. She wore the sweater from the backyard. Bad choice. She walked across the concrete floor like it was a runway and stopped at my table. The guys went silent like someone had turned down a knob. We need to talk, she said. We did, I answered. You found paper on the table. You're blowing up our life over nothing. That envelope contained dates, times, photos. I told her evenly. It didn't say nothing anywhere. She lowered her voice. You're humiliating me. You did that work, I replied. Not me. A couple of our crew hovered, pretending to wipe a machine that didn't need wiping. I stood up to my full height, so we were eye level. Mark, she whispered, switching gears, I messed up. I can fix it. We can go to counseling. We can. No, I cut in. I'm not rebuilding a table we both watched you saw in half. She tried a new angle. We keep this quiet. No one needs to know. We can handle it like adults. We are, I said. We're ending it without a circus. I set a boundary in public because she tried to test me in my space. I'm going back to work now. You can call your ride. Her mouth opened, then shut. She looked around, saw no friendly eyes, and left. Ethan walked up and handed me a wrench. That was a masterclass, he said quietly. You didn't even raise your voice. I don't plan to start now. That night, there was a bag missing from the closet and a dent in a throw pillow like it had been punched. I slept in the guest room with the door shut. The next day, Lisa texted a check mark and a picture of her own table with papers on it. Signed, she wrote. No drama. Good, I replied. Keep moving. Jenna tried soft again. A casserole in the oven the night after. A note that said, We could try fresh. I can show up. I made a plate, ate it, washed the dish, and left the pan clean on the stove. I didn't respond to the note. The next morning, she brewed coffee early and handed me a mug like a peace offering. I'm serious, she said. You're throwing away years. I'm throwing away disrespect, I corrected. Years are just a number. You can't end a marriage by leaving a file on a table, she snapped, the sugar voice dropping. I didn't end it that way, I replied. You ended it outside a beige ranch. She flinched, not because she felt bad, because I named the thing without embroidery. I picked up my keys. I have a meeting. You can be out by Friday or stay till the 31st. Your call. Just don't wait for me to argue. That window's closed. At the shop, I told HR to switch my emergency contact from Jenna to Ethan and my brother. I updated my beneficiaries. Adult moves. No meanness. Just lines. New world. Ethan said, watching me sign. You alright? I'm not a lamp, I said. I don't need to be alright to function. On Thursday, our neighbor Kayla, who runs the neighborhood Facebook page like it's her third job, waved me over. You okay? She asked, eyes sharp. I saw a car last week. Parked weird. Not yours. I'm making changes, I said. You need anything? Holler, she said. And for the record, you always took your trash cans in on time. That counts on our street. I actually laughed. Good to know. Friday came. Jenna packed. She moved like a person staging a scene. Loud zippers, sighs, half-closed drawers. She kept waiting for me to step into the script and ask where she was going, what she planned, how we could fix it. I didn't audition. Weekend with the girls, she announced from the hallway, bag on her shoulder. Don't wait up. Have a good one, I said, not looking up from my laptop. She hesitated. You don't even care. I care enough to stop pretending, I answered. Drive safe. She left a full minute of silence at the door like a final offer and then closed it. I waited a beat, stood, grabbed my own bag, and headed for the coast. Lisa was already on the road. We had a plan, no talking about them for a day. We stuck to it. We walked the pier, bought coffee from a window where the barista said Han and meant it, sat on a bench and watched a father teach his daughter to throw a baseball with her whole arm instead of wrist. Life doing normal. My shoulders dropped 3 inches without me telling them to. On the second morning, we did the grown-up chores. We drove back to town separately, walked into our respective houses, and left the documents where they couldn't be missed. When I set mine down, I added a small stack of photos in the envelope, not to sting but to stop the story from growing legs. I put a sticky note. No texts. Use email if you must. Logistics only. We didn't stick around. I grabbed a bag, relocked the door, and left again. I took the long route back to the beach, past the stadium, past the high school where kids were running laps even though it was Saturday. The phone buzzed in my console with a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring out. Another buzz, a text from Jenna's sister, then from a mutual friend who'd always taken Jenna's side like it was a charity. I blocked the numbers and turned up the air. Back at the cottage, Lisa had made pancakes. I burned the first one and pretended I meant to. She rolled her eyes. You think they'll sign without a spectacle? She asked later, cleaning a plate. They already did, I said. They like ease. This is the easiest exit. You're right. She set the dish to dry. You know what's funny? Tell me. I slept 8 hours, she said. I haven't done that in months. That's not funny, I said. That's the headline. Monday morning, I got up at 5 and ran the shoreline path until my chest reminded me I'm not 25. I fixed a cabinet door at the cottage because it squeaked and no one else was going to fix it. Then I drove back into town for work. On my desk was a padded envelope. Inside, Jenna's ring, the house key, a note with 3 sentences about mail and utilities. No apology. No story. Clean. At lunch, Ethan tossed me a bottle of water. So, I said and showed him the note. Good, he nodded. Clean. How's the cottage? Quiet. Take it, he said. Stay there this month. Get your head straight. That's the plan. 2 weeks later, papers were done. No theatrics. I moved my clothes into a rental down the block from the shop, a 1-story with a small yard and a garage deep enough for a workbench. I bought a second-hand grill. I started going to Thursday poker with the guys again. People asked gentle questions. I gave short answers. No one pressed. Lisa and I texted sometimes. At first, it was practical, logistics about a storage unit, a recommendation for a good locksmith. Then it was not just that. It was a good song she'd heard on the radio, a picture of her niece at a school play, a link to an article about people like us losing weight from anxiety and then suddenly getting hungry again. I sent back a photo of the deck I was sanding and a video of Ethan trying to start a stubborn lawnmower with 30% patience and 70% sarcasm. We laughed. We didn't flirt. We let the quiet do its job. One Saturday, Jenna showed up at my rental without announcing herself. That was a mistake. She learned it fast. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch, closing it behind me like a human bouncer. "We need to talk," she began. "I made a mistake. I'm ready to make it right." "You signed," I reminded. "We're not walking that back." "You're cold," she said, eyes wet but hard. "You always were. You liked me fine when I waited in lines for pastries and booked weekends you canceled," I replied. "This is me the same, minus the part where I ignored disrespect." She tried to step past me. I didn't move. "Don't do that," I said. "We're not going to start a new chapter where you drop by whenever you want. Email. Logistics. That's it. You're impossible," she spat. "I'm consistent," I corrected. "Good luck with your plans." She left with a noise like a chair scraping a floor. I watched her drive away and went back to sanding the deck. The next day, our neighbor from the new place, Mr. Albright, an old mechanic with a permanent grease stain on his right thumb, wandered over. "You're doing it wrong," he grunted, peering at my sander. "You gotta go with the grain, not against it. Life's like that." "Noted," I said, and he showed me a better way. Good men show you the thing and then let you do it. Weeks turned into a new routine. I cooked for one and liked it. I bought a used pickup with no car payment and more bed than I needed. I fixed the cabinet hinges that had annoyed me at the old house for a year because this time no one said, "Later." Lisa and I met for coffee after work one Tuesday because she was nearby and it felt normal. We talked about everything but them for an hour. When she stood to leave, she hesitated. "Do you ever think," she said, "that the two of them weren't the center of anything? That we gave them too much real estate?" "All the time," I said. "I'm done paying rent on that." She smiled. "Me too." A month later, she came by the cottage with a box of houseplants someone had given her as a "you got this" gift. She said they were going to die on her watch and maybe I could keep them alive. I lined them on the kitchen windowsill like a squad and promised nothing. We sat on the deck and listened to the same gulls argue about the same scraps. My phone buzzed, and I didn't even think to check who it was. It wasn't the center anymore. The last message I got from Jenna was a photo of a cat she'd adopted with a caption that read, "He hates me less than you do." I didn't reply. Hate isn't the word. Indifference is. It's quieter. My life filled in fast with normal. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market. Poker on Thursdays. A toolbox that stayed where I put it. Work that stayed at work. No extra duffel bags at the door. No apologies written like press releases. Lisa and I took a hike one weekend without telling anyone. No cameras, no proof, because the point wasn't to be seen. It was to keep walking. When people ask what happened, I don't give a speech. I say the truth. I stopped tolerating disrespect. I drew a line and stuck to it. The rest fell in place. The last time I saw Jenna was at the grocery store. She had a cart with a basil plant and 2 bottles of cheap wine. She glanced at me like I was a weather pattern she hadn't planned for. "How's life?" she said, fake casual. "Better," I answered. "Yours?" "Fine," she lied. We nodded like neighbors and moved on. I got home and texted Lisa a photo of the basil I bought to match. She sent back a laugh and a threat to steal it if I let it wilt. Months later, the deck at the cottage is finished. The grill works. I've got friends who stop by unannounced and always bring something. There's a woman who sends me photos of sunsets and asks what I'm making for dinner and sometimes shows up with a bag of groceries. We didn't rush into anything. We didn't need to. We'd both had enough speed. As for Jenna, I hear in passing that the girls are tired. The newness burned off. The beige ranch changed hands. None of that has anything to do with me. The only part that did was the paper I left on the table and the photo I sent from the water with a cup of coffee and a sentence that ended it clean. When I think back to the night with the tulips and the eclairs, I don't get angry. I remember standing there offering peace and getting a shrug. That's the moment I should have seen it. I see it now. I did what grown men do when the respect leaves. I stopped debating it. I changed the access, and I walked. I didn't slam a door. I closed it. That's the difference that matters. Now, the only doors that open are the ones I choose. And the life on the other side is quiet, honest, and mine.